You're using the bow wrong. Now, before you go down in the comments and roast me like a Lunchable that you forgot in the microwave, let me explain. If you are only familiar with the bow from Monster Hunter Worlds, you're using the bow wrong. And it's not your fault. In Monster Hunter Worlds, your main objective was the proverbial dance of death. As you danced around the monster, charging your arrows with status effects from the vials that you brought along with you, this bow is not the same bow. In fact, I'm confident that the devs took a mech from a game that they scrapped and reskinned it as a bow and arrow in order to fit right alongside the medieval suits of armor and swords so big, it even makes your dad look small. Now, that's not to say that you can't get away with the proverbial dance of death, dancing around the monster, pincushioning it with as many status-imbued arrows as you possibly can. And in fact, they actually make that a lot easier. With the new homing missile feature that they added to the bow, even people with the aim of a drunken toddler can focus fire on a specific body part and focus on breaking parts off of the monster. As now, all of your arrows will swarm to wherever you deem to place your homing missile. But that's not what you're doing wrong. And it's not your fault. The arc shot in Monster Hunter Worlds was basically useless. Aside from giving you that really cool noise, the ching every time you hit the monster's head, and giving you that one oh so delectable knockdown that you would receive. When you couldn't even take advantage of it, the arc shot in Wilds has been reworked and is now completely different, to the point where you should be spamming it. If you're not pincushioning the monster with more heat-seeking missiles than a third world country that just discovered that they have oil, then you are playing the bow wrong. Your new damage cycle should include spamming the arc shot to set up as many homing missiles as you can onto the monster, then following that up with your focus mode. Your focus mode is now your primary method of damage and will be your best friend as you draw back your bow and draw in a breath and enter into a destructive Zen state, similar to what I can only imagine it would be like if Doomguy was practicing yoga. A state in which you are now the master of breaking monster parts and setting up wounds. And once you have one, or better yet, multiple wounds set up on the monster, you will now enter into what I lovingly call Wound Breaker mode. Do not target more than one wound with focus mode. Now, you definitely want to lock onto all the rockets that you slathered onto whatever body part you could reach. A lot like those stars in those videos that you watch when you're home alone. But again, do not let your dopamine-fueled addiction to bright, shiny, explosive things drive you and your non-existent attention span to targeting more than one wound at a time. Because the brand new focus mode will target wounds and arrows and unleash a barrage of homing missiles, which is then followed up by a dragon piercer, creating this massive barrage of arrows that smack into the creature, explode, sending shockwaves through the entire forest, desert, or wherever you are. Then you line up the shot with your almighty dragon piercer, which just so happens to be what your mom used to call your dad before she had you. This essentially stun locks the creature into whatever tiny portion of the map that you are currently in. The monster cannot run, because for the first time in your life, you are now the main character. Because your attack animation isn't over yet. So use that dragon piercer and target all of the arrows that you pincushioned the monster with. Because if the dragon piercer hits all of the arrows that you already launched, it triggers a secondary explosion dealing massive damage. And remember all the wounds I told you not to target? After you've launched an arc shot for the second time, pick a second one and target that one individually along with all the rockets on the monster's back, and repeat what you just did, one wound at a time, until all of the wounds are gone, because this essentially stun locks the monster into place, and it opens you up for repeatability, which is what this bow thrives on. You're gonna fire, you're gonna break monster wounds. The monster will fall over sometimes. Sometimes it just gets staggered a little bit and then kind of stands back up. But the one thing to keep in mind is that while you're doing this, the monster cannot escape. In fact, it can barely move. So there is no way that your party, if you happen to grace one with your presence, should get hit by the monster while you're doing this. You've essentially stun locked it and crowd controlled it into spot. And if they do, then you've picked the wrong friend, or at least the wrong party. Get new ones, because the monster should stay in a very, very, very small spot, essentially not moving compared to how monsters normally act. Now with that said, focus mode seems to be your primary source of damage, and it is. That is no mistake. In fact, the only happy little accidents here is my Palico and how you got into the world. But regardless, they specifically designed this weapon to focus on focus mode. I mean, there's a reason why it's a homing barrage. It hits wounds, cracks them open, and it staggers the monster. They're rewarding you for playing the bow the way they want you to play the bow. And if you do, you'll be dealing damage. You're going to be keeping the monster crowd controlled. You're going to lock him in spot, essentially stun locking the monster, letting your party build up damage. They get to finally charge up whatever gauges they have from whatever weapon they've been flailing around this whole time. Whatever weapon the blonde blacksmith suggested to them that day, and they so happily went along with, because she's a con artist with huge personality, and your party probably isn't familiar with the weapon that they're using, but that's okay. Because with all the crowd control that you have, it's your job to make them look good. Now with all of that said, if you are using the arc shot, and you aren't just dancing around the monster trying to build up status effects, then you are using the bow right. And I apologize for wasting your time. And regardless of popular opinion, if you're having fun playing your weapon the way that you're playing it, then you're also using it right. And everything I just said doesn't really matter. But you can try it out if you want, and let me know what you think, because at the end of the day, I'm not here to tell anyone what to do, because a lot like most rules and laws, what I say is just a suggestion. So good luck out there hunting monsters, and as always, take care, and goodbye!